Hey there, Tom here with just a quick note before we begin this episode that I made a hot take in this episode that I didn't want to see Blizzard waste resources on dragon riding events in the old world. Well, since we recorded this episode on May 11th, 2023, Blizzard came out and said that they are working on a patch called Fractures of Time, which will be available in the summer. And they have stated that they will be adding dragon riding events to Kalimdor and perhaps more old world areas. And I'm actually kind of looking forward to it now. So I guess the whole point is don't make hot takes. They're just kind of dumb. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Talking WoW, the podcast where we talk about World of Warcraft. My name is Tom, and today on this episode we are going to be talking about the future of dragon riding. Joining me on this episode is my co-host and dragon fanatic, maybe it's Marty.
Yeah, I flew right in for the occasion.
So glad to have you here, and we are going to be talking about one of the biggest features of the Dragonflight expansion itself, Marty. Dragon riding.
Oh, riding. I read it as raiding. I thought we were going to talk about raiding, so...
No, that's probably another time, Marty.
All right.
So sorry about that. If that got your hopes up. No, we're talking about dragon riding. And like I say, one of the key features of the Dragonflight expansion. And I think let's just start rolling it back to when this was announced. And as somebody that's played Guild Wars 2, I remember there just being a lot of similarities of World of Warcraft's ripping off Guild Wars 2. And there was a whole kerfuffle around that. And it was just like, oh, that's what we're doing right now. But what was your initial reaction to Blizzard bringing dragon riding to World of Warcraft?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where, yeah, I thought it looked cool, but it's also something where you can completely, gauge it until you actually get your hands on it. So I was like, just leaning back a little, looking forward to it, but skeptically, I think you have to remember as well that we came out from, 2 expansions in a row where we had a lot of weird systems that, had to do a lot of work to get into these systems and things like that. So I think I was a little bit skeptical, but I was also looking forward to it because it looked fun, and I do like flying around. So
I remember because at the time when Dragonflight was announced, I was not playing World of Warcraft, and I had no intention to be playing World of Warcraft. Jeez, what a difference a year makes. But at the time I was pretty heavily invested in Guild Wars 2, and I was of two minds, I think, as well. I'm not sure how this is going to work in World of Warcraft just because of how flying has worked in the game for so long.
Yeah.
Like, it's really going to be a big change.
Yeah.
And how is that going to work? But also, Guild Wars 2 has probably one of the best mount systems in MMORPGs.
Right.
Every single mount that you get, if it's a ground mount, if it's a flying mount, they have abilities and it feels really engaging. And I guess I was just like, I don't know. I feel like maybe it's going to be some expansion gimmick and that's all it's going to be. And I wasn't playing Warcraft at the time, so I was not hyped. I was not feeling it. And it wasn't something that made me go, yeah, I got to get back into World of Warcraft right now and fly me a dragon. Even though there were adverts with Pedro Pascal and David Arbor saying, look, dragons, get your own dragon. Even Pedro Pascal didn't have the power to bring me back in at that time.
How is that even possible? It's Pedro.
I know. Maybe after watching The Last of Us would have been different. But no, I just wasn't feeling like it was going to be a big thing. Like I think it was just going to be, it's going to be here for the expansion, then it's going to be gone. It's just fitting in that thematically.
Yeah.
But then when I came back to World of Warcraft and got into the Dragonflight, very excited to get this dragon because I saw people playing it and flying through the new zones and just feeling like this seems really different from like what we're used to with regards to flying, because usually the whole subject of flying, right, is a real sore point in some ways, because some people absolutely love it and say it's a necessity for World of Warcraft, and other people, I'm going to put myself into this bracket, I'm not really a big fan of flying. I think it's immersion breaking. I think it undoes a lot of the work that the developers do to build a world and make it feel alive and dangerous, and I think flying just ends up being one of those things that is just a convenience thing from getting to A to B. It doesn't really serve any other purpose, and yes, there's lots of pretty flying mounts out there, not going to deny you that one, but overall I'm just not a big fan of flying. And
So you enjoyed the more so much, right? Because you couldn't even just normally mount up there, so that must have been, you know, your cup of tea, right?
Oh, I haven't even done that, so I don't know. What is that? Is that something from the last expansion?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Never heard of it. But what's your take on flying mounts? Because I know that's an age-old debate that we should definitely bring up right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did like that model where when you come into a new expansion, you are ground-mounted, but then as soon as you hit max level, then you can unlock it. I liked that idea. I'm also partially on board with the other one where you need to do some achievements and stuff like that. If it's not super difficult to get through and it's difficult to figure out what you actually need to do, because I do feel like some of the stuff some of the hoops you needed to jump through sometimes were a little bit like, fine if you're playing the expansion and doing each patch and stuff like that, because it's a lot of the time stuff you're going to do anyway, but if you're a returning player, it's like, sorry, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? Stuff like that. So,
and it did feel like that was the middle ground, I suppose, Blizzard had found with this, because there was just people saying like, we shouldn't have flying from the start, or we shouldn't have flying at all. It's just ruining the game. And there was other people saying like, I've got 300 mounts, like I can't use them here. Like, what's going on? And it feels like that was the middle ground of like, yeah, it'll come eventually, but only when you've investigated all the zones and done this criteria to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't really know. I'm somewhere in between, somewhere where I'm like, yeah, I think it's fine in the beginning that you don't necessarily have your flying mounts for whatever reason. But I also feel like, why do we need to wait several patches for it to unlock? I feel like it would be fine when once you have done the leveling and you've gotten through the zones and because at this point it's also where you start to make it's already at this point. Sorry, I start to make alts and stuff like that, and play through the content again. So I'm like, I've done this. I'm over. I've done I've done the main part already. Why do I need to do all this again and don't have access to flying mount and stuff like that? So I do feel like with the old system that, hey, can you unlock it a bit earlier? That would be nice. Okay, thanks, bye.
So you mentioned the old system, so let's move on to the current system, because I think with that out the way, that we can see in this expansion things have been done totally different.
Yes.
And that is because the expansion has been built around this key component of Dragonriding. That is something that's here because of the expansion, and
it's even in the name of the expansion,
There we go. There's a lot of elements that tie into this as well. You've got the customization with your dragon, you've got the glyphs out in the world to gain talent points effectively that you can use to power up your dragon, make it able to fly for longer and more efficiently. And we're pretty much given this dragon almost at the start of the expansion. You go for a few quests and you get a bit of a feel for what the Dragon Isles is, but it's not too long then before they're saying, hey, here you go, Pedro Pascal promised you this, and you're taken to the skies of the Dragon Isles. For me, as somebody, again, that just doesn't really enjoy flying that much, I enjoy it when I have to get somewhere, but otherwise I'm just like, we've established that top.
I really, really just enjoy when you're somewhere up high and you dive down to gain speed and stuff like that, because I already did that on my normal flying mounts, pretending that is what would happen and stuff like that, because I don't know, maybe I'm just too much of a role player sometimes, but when I was flying around, I already did all these moves. It just didn't do anything. So
yeah, and you raised a great point there already, that dragon riding is quite an engaging thing, and even now we're at a point where we've had it for quite a while. As of recording, we've just hit the first patch of Dragonflight, and it feels like that is still something that hasn't got old or boring yet. In fact, for me, it just seems to get better because they add a few more elements to the dragon riding every patch. So starting off in Dragonflight, it was like, oh, I'm going to get flying straight away. Like, what is that going to do? Well, one, it's essential for this expansion because of the way the terrain is designed. Like, I don't want to be running around on a ground mountain in the Dragon Isles. It was built for dragons. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So in that regard, they have designed this location with that in mind, and it obviously works really, really well with the types of terrain that you have. You've got bridges that you can fly under. You've got high-rise cliffs that you can, like you say, Marty, fall off and then shoot downwards, gaining speed, and then pull up at the last minute and feel that wind through your hair. So instantly we were getting this happening while we were doing our questing and our leveling, and it felt natural, it felt right, it felt this is how this was supposed to be played, because it was. Overall, that design works really well here, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can totally see how the landscape and everything is built for dragon riding in mind, because this whole land is like, one zone is huge. It's freaking huge because you can gain so much speed when you're flying through it. And I love it. It's fantastic. I think it might also give some issues. I don't know how early we're going to jump into this topic, but, you know, I think it will also create some issues for the future.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. It is, and I think we'll touch on that very, very shortly. Just to continue in the current time of dragon riding, I think it has come with some frustrations as well, because overall I think it is revolutionary. It has made traveling around the world feel just something. It gives it some meaning. It's not just I'm trying to get to A to B. Yes, I am, but
it's one of those things. I think you can make the comparison to open world games, you know, where a lot of the time there's fast travel points and stuff like that in those type of games, because, you know, because it's open world nature, you obviously need to travel a lot. And you can say that, you know, World of Warcraft is also an open world game, you know. So, but if we compare it to something like Spider-Man, for instance, I don't know if you ever played the PlayStation Spider-Man game,
yeah,
but
I did not see that comparison coming.
No,
I'm here for it.
But the thing with Spider-Man is that I really rarely use the fast travel points, because traversing the world is so much fun in Spider-Man, and it's the same here, that just traversing the world in itself is a gameplay mechanic now. It's fun, it's engaging, you have your different abilities, and someone like me, I can fly the way that I'm, you know, want to fly, and pretend that, oh no, I'm diving and gaining speed, and, you know, it's so much fun. So I actually don't really use fast travel points anymore. I only use flight path if, you know, if I need to go somewhere far away and I need to, you know, and if I can do something at the same time, like going to the kitchen and quickly grab something, that's the only time I use it.
Wait, there's flight masters in
there
this
is
expansion?
Flight masters, you know.
Oh, I thought they removed them.
Yeah, so traveling itself is fun and engaging, and I love that.
It's just been a breath of fresh air, literally, when you're riding that dragon, and just hearing the music and I don't know, almost feels like the ambience makes it feel like there's wind coming out of my speakers or something. I could just feel the air. I don't know what it is. And with dragon riding as well, we've seen the introduction of dragon races and those dragon time trials, which I think they're quite fun as well.
Yeah.
They start off at a normal difficulty, giving you a feel for the landscape and area as well, and then they've decided to add an advanced version of those, and now they've added reverse races as well, which means you get to do the course backwards, which is always a bit more jarring when you're used to doing it one way and then you switch it around the other way. So I like that it hasn't just been a means for travel. There is actual use for the dragon in these quests, and who knows, we might see the dragon actually be used for mechanics such as raid encounters or something like that in the future.
I mean, we already do have a dungeon where you actually use your drakes to fly from position to position and stuff like that. So.
I'm not buying that one. No, I'm not buying that one, because that is just an open world area. That is not like a proper dungeon to me. That is just, this is an open world area that we're calling a dungeon, but it's literally just out in the world.
But still, you utilize the drakes. You cannot get around that point in this non-dungeon.
I refuse to.
You're not getting
I'm walking over
You're not getting into my Mythic Plus group, then that's for sure. I actually enjoyed those races as well. So, in doing my weekly playthrough with that weekly, rep quest where I need to gain rep, I usually go around and do the races, the world quests that has races attached to them, because I really just enjoy doing them. I also gone through, at least in the starter world, in Dragonflight, I've done all of the races on gold, just because I just had so much fun.
What a brag!
It maybe.
No, you're not here to brag about things,
well,
Marty. We're just here to talk about.
Do you have gold in all of them? Just want to point that one out. No.
Maybe I'd need to check. I don't remember these things off the top of my head.
But no, that's how much I enjoyed it, that I actually went through and did each of them. There were some of the races where probably a good thing that I didn't live stream those, because there were probably a few cuss words here and there when you're right before the goal and then just hit the ground and comes to like complete standstill, and you're just like, no.
Oh, the amount of times I've done that, or ran into a tree, or even ran out of vigor, just got too excited and spammed the vigor button, and then suddenly you're going up an upwards incline and you're just going like, you're just like totally out of breath, and you're like, nope, I'm not gonna make it, and then you just sink down, and it's like, okay, restart.
A pro tip, if you're doing the races and you want to go for gold, don't use Whirling Surge, like the one that costs 3. It's actually not worth it, in my opinion. I think going for just the normal surge forward or the upwards one is probably the way to go. Just a little tip from someone who has all of them on gold. Wait, did I mention that I have all of them on gold?
You did, but I might edit out the parts where you said it like 3 times, just hammering that home. Let's move away from Marty's gold and the current affairs of dragon riding and Dragonflight, and gaze to the future of what dragon riding might look like. Because we're talking about it here, it's a big feature, and I'm gonna make a generalization here that I feel like dragon riding has been well received, and that it has added something to the game, and that seemingly quite positive. I know there are people that are maybe getting fatigued with it now. There are people saying we need to get our current mounts in here. I just want to be able to hover over an area, and at some point I agree. It would be nice to maybe have that safety of being able to just hover somewhere. But there are a lot of places in the Dragon Isles where you can just plunk down and there's just not mobs anywhere. Doesn't feel like there's that enemy density of just mobs everywhere. No. There are a lot of just open spaces, which is nice, which works for the world as well.
I do agree that the hovering somewhere is definitely something I'm missing, especially when you're out mining or herbing, and you need, some of them are like on high cliffs and stuff like that, and you just lack that precision that hovering down to it gives with the normal mount. But I mean,
suddenly the person who had all the races on gold can't mine a node.
Yeah, because that requires precision landing. No, I mean, again, it's very small complaints, stuff like this, but it's still something where it's like, it happens too often, where those precision stuff where you need to land somewhere specifically. I'm missing that from time to time, but who knows? I mean, they have been adding new small things, features, and stuff like that to dragon riding with each smaller and or larger patches that has been coming out so far. So maybe it's something that we'll get soon.
And yeah, there was a interview recently with Morgan Day. I'll drop a link into the show notes linking to our source for this. They were asked a question about dragon riding being considered for future expansions, and Morgan Day said, I'll just read this quickly. Initially, we were interested in the response to dragon riding before committing to it becoming a permanent part of WoW. Having seen the reception from the community, I'm sure there'd be a lot of feedback if it didn't become an evergreen element of World of Warcraft. So I absolutely think it is here to stay.
I mean, I would hope so. I do see a few problems with this though going forward, and that is that, imagine if they want to do something similar where you cannot start out the expansion with flying, but if you also need to accommodate flying, in this way, you would need huge zones. So imagine having these huge zones and not being able to fly from the get-go. I think that is probably one of the main concerns that I have,
It also potentially limits your creativity there then of what you want the zone to look like, because if dragon riding is something that then has to be considered. You can't just start going back to making zones how you did 10 years ago. Like, that has to be a consideration. Always has to be a consideration when flying is introduced to a zone. We saw that, heck, when they introduced flying, normal flying to the old world, they had to use a cover story of a whole expansion to do that because it was so much work, right? It's not just something that is a switch of going on and off. And I think with dragon riding, the complexities are a little bit more as well, simply because the way the mount moves, you have a lot more control over the mount and how you control it and the abilities there. So you do need that. You need extra room to be able to maneuver this dragon around. Like, imagine taking your dragon into Black Rock Mountain, for example, when, you know, inevitably we maybe get dragon riding in the old world. Imagine saying, hey, I'm going to take a shortcut through Black Rock Mountain. I don't know why the you're doing this, by the way, but it's just a bad example I'm using. And you go to fly through there, because it's such a narrow space, it's just like, that won't work. That is just going to be really a terrible idea. Don't go through Black Rock Mountain on your dragon.
Why would you do that even? Because you wouldn't take a Lamborghini full speed through a small village either, right? You know, I mean, probably some people do, but you probably shouldn't, you know?
Sometimes it's not about being efficient. It's just sending a message.
Wow. But no, I mean, the thing is, I actually do think it would still sort of work in the old world as well, and because I'm playing a drag tier, and it's also probably leads me into a little bit of a missed opportunity. But anyway, in the beginning, with the first pre-patch, drag tiers was actually introduced, and since I'm an Alliance drag tier, I spent most of my time in Stormwind, and then there was these events that happened, and the event is like in Badlands, not too far off Stormwind. So a lot of the time I actually flew up to like a high rise close to Stormwind, jumped out of my mountain, and just used the drag tier's own. You know, they have the soar abilities, where they have a few of these dragon mount abilities, but it's only like a limited time. But it was actually faster, you know, doing that than just flying down on the normal mount, and so it worked quite well. So I could totally see, you know, if you actually had the full ability of the mounts, that you can get around the old world quicker and in a more fun way anyway. But I think the missed opportunity here is, why the hell as a drag tier can I not just fly? Why don't I have a flying, you know, ability mount myself? It makes no sense to me, because we are basically dragons. Why is a dragon flying on a dragon, you know? It
looks super strange. I'm not gonna lie. It's just makes my brain a bit confused when I see a dragon riding on a dragon.
Yeah, I would have hoped. I thought that when like Borgren has, you know, a ground mount. Just they are a ground mount basically. They can just start wild running, and then they are a full speed ground mount. So I actually thought that it would be the same thing here with the drag tier, that they would have these dragon riding abilities just built into them.
That actually makes me think, just you saying that the Drake itself that you customize, that you're powering up, will serve a greater purpose later on in this expansion, because if it was merely just the cosmetic side of things, probably it wouldn't matter that Drakfir were just flying around on their own, but potentially maybe there's something to do with the Drake later on in the game that you're going to need that for something, and
maybe
I don't know what it's for, but I am of the opinion that it just doesn't feel totally right that Drakfir are riding on dragons. It doesn't make any sense. That they shouldn't need to do that. But maybe there is a reason why they aren't able to do that just yet. And maybe this is the new conundrum of when do we let Drakfir fly on their own?
I mean, the soar abilities sort of feel pointless now that we have unlocked mounts so much. I mean, I think in the beginning I could probably see the idea if you're around in the world mining, you can quickly just soar and get to the next mining node and stuff like that. But now that you have unlocked, you know, that you don't even dismount, or at least I have, when I'm mining, I don't even dismount anymore. The soar ability is useless. I don't really need it for anything, except feeling cool.
I mean, that is probably the most important thing when it comes to playing Warcraft. You want to look cool.
True.
Unfortunately, with Drakfir, your gear isn't looking that amazing, but hey, at least you can do that, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to hear a hot take from me before we go? So we're talking about dragon riding in the future and dragon riding in the old world. It seems like it's probably going to end up in the old world. Something I probably don't want to see in the old world, though, is the dragon races, the dragon time trials, because I don't think they're going to work very well in the old world. There's not many obstacles like there is in the Dragon Isles. I think don't waste your resources on that, Blizzard. Yes, let's have dragon riding in the old world, but I would say don't worry about those time trials in the old world, because I think that could be spent better elsewhere, or give us the ability to build our own time trial tracks and let us do it.
I like that. I like that idea actually very much.
I actually didn't know where I was going with that, and like I was like, don't do it, and then suddenly I'm like, but let us do it.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll do it
it's
better.
probably initially going to take more, development time to make a system where we can build it ourselves, but in the long haul, that could be quite cool. I could see I could see that going in a lot of different cool ways. So.
And you totally know I'm going to build the Black Rock Mountain Grand Prix if we get the opportunity to do that.
That's why you want to take your Lamborghini through a small village.
We will find out who the very best in dragon riding truly is. Marty going on about his gold medals, but I don't think it means nothing until you've raced through Black Rock Mountain. So we'll see what happens with that.
I mean,
Marty.
I'm attracted. I'll go practice right now.
All right, that brings us to the end of another episode of Talking WoW. What do you think about dragon riding? Do you want to see more of it in the future, or are you donezo with it? Let us know in the places that you do that. And we really appreciate you tuning in to this episode of Talking WoW. I've been Tom. That has been Marty.
Yes, this is me, and I'm going to jump off the edge and soar down.
We've been Talking WoW. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, champion. Did you enjoy this episode of Talking WoW? If so, why not drop a review on your podcast catcher of choice, or leave us a comment. You can find Talking WoW on Twitter or YouTube over at Talking WoW. Hope to see you again soon.